Hi guys, my name's Ike Eisenhower,
I'm Abigail Bentz.
and I am doing a comparison of the American school system to the Dutch school system. So to begin and give a brief template of the American school system, um, and this is only in my experience. Many kids in many different districts across America have different experiences, but for me, it began with a pre-K slash daycare, which started at a few months old and goes usually until you're 4 years old. In which case you move on to kindergarten, which is mandatory, and that is when you are 5 to 6 years old before you begin the grading system, and then you move into elementary school, which is for 6 to 10 years old, and that encompasses first through fifth grade. And then children move into middle school, which is 11 to 13 years old typically, and that is sixth through eighth grade. And then finally high school, which is 14 to 17 or 18 years old, and that's ninth to 12th grade. That is the last step before kids either enter college or vocational school or the job market. Before that, everything else was mandatory, and after high school, you get to pick where you want to go. However, in the Netherlands, they don't have any pre-K or daycare type system. Uh, they start primary school, which in our experience included kids from a few months old until 12 years old. And at 12 years old, they take an exam that essentially decides their future. That is taken into account along with teachers' recommendations, which decides where the child will attend for their secondary education. The Netherlands have their secondary education split up into four different areas. Um, what they call the lowest one is practical education, and that's a 6 year education, and that leads children straight into the job market. So when they graduate, they're done with schooling and they will get a job like a construction worker or a plumber. Um, a step up from that is called VMBO, which is only a few years, and that is split up itself into four levels of different vocational tracks. But essentially, the entire thing is called senior secondary vocational, which is more upper level vocational careers. For example, a hairdresser would be something you could get out of the VMBO track. After VMBO, there's the second highest track, which is called HAVO, and that's a 5 year track that leads children into HBO, which is university college, and that's where careers like a teacher or professor would come from. And finally, you have VWO, which is a 6 year track, and that leads children in university, and that is called the highest track. Usually, after that, you can become a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer. If you wanted to, you could move up from practical education to VWO, but it would take much longer because you'd have to complete practical education and then take some VMBO courses and HAVO and then finally finish in VWO. So you have to work your way up and finish your track. Um, Aside from the differences in the basic structure, there are a few major differences just in the content of Netherlands schools, Dutch schools, and American schools. Um, a big one is the fact that in America there's more private schooling than there is in the Netherlands. It's definitely a thing in the Netherlands, but it's very uncommon. Another thing our group experienced was in Aachen in Germany. Um, their primary school included religion, which is something you would never see in a public school, like an elementary school or middle school in America. They don't teach any religion. In fact, some even take it out of the Pledge of Allegiance. So that was probably the biggest difference I noticed in some European schools and American schools. Another big one was that the Netherlands had a entire system and a regulated system in place for refugees and other displaced people that were coming into their nation, while America, to my knowledge, has nothing even similar to that. And if they do, it's not nearly as regulated as they have in the Netherlands. We also experienced high dosage math tutoring, which, although may be special in Netherlands, in my experience, that seemed like regular tutoring. Myself and many of my friends growing up took very similar tutoring to help us on our SATs and to get us through math class, and it just didn't seem very special to me. Um, and the final major difference I noticed was the fact that kids have to choose their tract once they get to their secondary school in the Netherlands very early on at 13 or 14, while in America, you don't really choose your career track until you are in college and then you're picking your major. And even at that point, you could kind of skew away from the major. Thank you very much, and I'm going to give it to Abigail for her part.
Hi, so I will be talking about the diversity, multiculturalism, and tolerance in America compared to the Netherlands. So I'm just going to go through a few occurrences that we experienced during our trip that I thought represented a more diverse culture and more tolerant culture. So the first one that I thought of was when we were at the EU. They told us that it's easier to study abroad within countries within the EU. There's a lower cost just in general for schooling, but you pay the cost of your home country, which can be 200 euros, and then you can easily travel, no passport checking normally. And then they use the same currency, and with America, you pay tuition, which is much higher usually, and then you need money for a passport, for a flight, new currency. There's language barriers. It's just a whole different challenge. So I think that kind of promotes like communication between different countries and just learning about different cultures. The second one I noticed is in the Aachen primary school. They had the principal explained to us that they had teacher exchanges. So on each Thursday, the teachers would exchange from that German school to a Dutch school. So even though they speak different languages, they were getting the children were getting exposed to a teacher or someone that they could respect from a different country. So that promoted diversity. In America, we don't have the proximity or the access to really do that kind of exchange program that frequently. And then also, I touched on this, but the Aachen Primary School, they talked about a bunch of different religions. The principal even said that they would go visit the places of worship. And they it sounded like they taught it without bias. In our public systems, it's rare that they even discuss religion or teach religion just because the teachers are afraid of trying to promote something. So I found that to kind of promote just tolerance within religion. So you could just learn about the other religions and decide for yourself. The next one I thought was a very good example of tolerance was the refugee school. So it's a bunch of different students coming together from all different countries, and the fact that they can get along, make friends with each other, and they almost helped each other learn Dutch and then helped each other excel in a completely different country, I thought was really impressive from a tolerant level. And then, like I said, I'm not sure if we have anything like that in America. And in all the schools, just the use of language and the teaching of English in a lot of schools, we don't have anything, at least we don't have as many kids that are as fluent in other languages, especially like as fluent in one other language. So in America, when you have a second language, it's almost more like a marketable trait. Like you can put it on a resume and you just hope that it helps you get a job. But in the Netherlands, it felt like when you learned the other language, it felt like it was more just for communicating, like for the actual use of it. I have a couple examples that I thought showed lack of diversity or support for diversity and lack of tolerance in the Netherlands. So the first one was the teaching college. Pretty much actually every teacher I spoke to said that they wanted to stay in their small area of the Netherlands to teach, which is where they were being taught. And in America, I feel like oftentimes when we get a degree, we don't know where we're going to end up, and normally a lot of people are okay with moving states or moving areas of the country. And then the other one was in the refugee school. One of the Palestinian kids from the United Arab Emirates, he works at a sushi place, and he was delivering to an older lady in the Netherlands, and she barely opened the door and told him to leave the sushi on the doorstep and just walk away, because I guess he said that she was afraid of how he looked, possibly, and I think that kind of shows lack of tolerance. However, we also have that same situation in America. So yeah, so that's all we have Thank you for a great trip. We had a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. We had a great time.
Thank you.